Funding applications and what you need to know. Hi, thanks for being here. It's Natasha Clark from Doncaster Creative Network. I was lucky to get some funding from the Culture Grant from DCLT to deliver this workshop, and we also delivered it a series of them in person as well. Of interest. Anyhow, I'm jumping straight into it. This is a kind of follow along workshop. And yeah, I hope you get some helpful information and insight from it. So, knowing how to write a successful funding application can feel overwhelming, and like there's some sort of secret cheat code that no one wants to share. I definitely feel that. However, it doesn't have to be that complicated. And by implementing a few key principles, you can help your application stand out from the rest. So, how do you actually feel about writing funding applications? I want you to have a minute to think about how does funding applications make you feel? Does it make you feel stressed? Does it make you feel overwhelmed? Does it make you feel anxious? Does it make you feel? I always feel really impatient. I don't like sometimes they have really long turnaround times and I'm impatient. I don't like waiting. I like to know, have I got it? Have I not got it? Can I move on with my life? Do I need to do the project? So yeah, having to think about these barriers that are blocking us, these emotional blockages, is helpful. Okay, we're going to go over a few different things today, but I want to start off with introducing Victoria. So don't be fooled. I'm no pro at writing funding. This is me, Natasha. Even though I've written my fair share, and I typically do okay with them, but I knew I needed to solicit the help of a professional. So I have brought on board Victoria Reeves, which is a learning and community development manager for Doncaster Council, and she's amazing. And she's a pro at this and often sits on panels reviewing and selecting people's applications. So she's aided me with the content of this workshop. I basically picked her brains, asked her lots and lots of questions, pulled out all the relevant information and put it together in this presentation. So, and it was really helpful for me. So hopefully it's going to be helpful for you as well. So breaking down the jargon. So what buzzwords can you use to show that you're responding to their needs? So often what we have to do is kind of act as a little bit of a chameleon and speak the language of the commissioner or the organisation. So what is a helpful task is all funding applications will have supporting documents, which will go over exactly the aims for the funding and things like that. And I would get that document and I'd go through and highlight keywords or kind of language that they use that you can pull out and drop into your application. That's just going to help you show that you're kind of speaking their language and you're on the same page as well. But this applies both ways, so it applies to artists and commissioners. So artists also need to bear in mind that not all panel members are always from cultural and arts backgrounds. So for example, using abbreviations such as R&D won't mean the same thing to people outside the field. So R&D in sort of culture sector means research and development, but R&D in other sectors can mean different things. And I didn't know this, but oftentimes you'll have people on panels who aren't just from arts and culture. They could be from healthcare, they could be from the business sector, they could be from sports, like they could be from a range of different areas which do not use the same jargon as we as creatives typically use and lean on. So kind of making the language you use accessible is really helpful. And if you're not sure, give your application to someone who isn't technically arty and see if they can understand your proposal. That's really helpful. So give it to someone who doesn't work in this space, and can they understand what you're on about? So what are commissioners actually looking for? So they want confidence in you. They want to know that you're going to deliver what you say you're going to deliver on within the timeline and the budget that you've laid out. So, and you can build confidence by outlining your experience. If you've not got a lot of experience, then is there similar projects that you've collaborated on or been a part of that you can share? And you can also build confidence in the commissioner by answering all of the questions. So this is something that Victoria sees a lot, where not all the questions to the application are answered. And so that instantly, your application gets rejected instantly. And then also matching the needs of the commissioner in your proposal. So back to that point of the supporting document. So each commissioner will have different aims and objectives of what they need the money to achieve. So in that application guidance or supporting document, have you read through and made sure that you've gone over what the aims are and the objectives are? Are you meeting what they're looking for? And how do you strengthen your case? So have you done this proposed project before? Again, going back on that track record and building reliability. Something that you can do to strengthen your case is by partnering with an existing organisation or trusted person in the field. So they can act as sort of endorsements to you and your project. It's also okay for some of the elements of the project to be unknown. I know this holds a lot of artists and creatives back. They feel like, oh, well, I don't know every single aspect of the project. Like some of it is loose and some of it is going to develop as I go along. Like I don't know exactly how it's going to look when it's finished. And those sorts of kind of questions are okay. And you can write into the application that parts of it will be co-created. And it would strengthen it even more if you said parts of it would be co-created with your audience or community, and build in that aspect of community engagement. And you can build in that aspect of community engagement through activities such as like workshops, steering groups, panels, consultations. So adding that within the project and within the project budget can help strengthen your case. And collaborate with other artists across different disciplines. That can really help to raise the value of your offering. So I do this all the time. I collaborate with filmmakers, photographers, because they're in a field that I have no clue about. And I know that they bring a lot of value to my practice and documenting the projects that I'm working on and the things that I'm doing. And so working together helps build both of our skill sets as well. And what's really important is so what, why this, and why now? Why is it important? So why is a project that you're proposing to deliver relevant to the area, relevant to now, relevant to the people who are going to engage with it, relevant to you and your practice and your career? Like what is the point of it? So making a case of why this is vital now is going to strengthen your argument. Putting together a project budget. So I typically start with a day rate and allow realistic timeframes on how long things will take. So you can check the day rate for yourself or other creatives you wish to work with on the Arts Union website. And for just kind of a standard artist, the approximate day rate at the minute is £330 a day. So you could use that as a starting point, and also add in the link to that in your application to show the reference of where you've got that number from. and the link's just there, but you can also just Google Artists Union England rates of pay and it'll come up. And then to figure out your project budget, you also need to have a look at your materials budget. And I normally put a materials budget which is a little bit larger than what I anticipate to accommodate for any unforeseen changes. And then commissioning other artists and freelancers on a fair wage is super important. So the council or organisations won't give you funding in your budget if you're planning on underpaying staff and other creatives because it's not seen as being ethical. Amazing. And check the funding guideline if they allow a contingency budget. Sometimes they won't say in the guideline. So if that information isn't on there, then email the contact on the application. So every application will have an email, sometimes a number of a contact who is taking in kind of inquiries and supporting people with writing their application. So I would email them and ask and to double check, like, does this allow a contingency budget? And also the more specific you are with your budget breakdown, the better chance you're going to get. So being super specific with where all these costs are going to go. And also if you had to ask for any quotes beforehand. And you kind of see how I break down my materials costs. So I put days of painting, £300 a day for 5 days, which is 1,500. And then canvas, super specific about the size and where I got it from and the price, any paints and things like that. Thinking about legacy. Now, this is something that we sometimes forget to think about. So a lot of funding focuses on the long-term vision and impact of a project, which means that commissioners want to avoid parachute projects. And a parachute project is basically any project that kind of drops in, does a lot of delivery and activity, and then kind of drops out. Now, the thing about parachute projects, especially if you're working in kind of vulnerable communities or things like that, is that it can actually cause more harm than good because those communities will get used to that engagement, that support, or that kind of activity. And then when you leave, they're kind of left stranded. So we need to think about what is the legacy and what is the longer term impact of the work that we do and deliver. And also what happens next? So what is the impact on the community and how can the project continue after the funding has ended? So a really sort of helpful example would be this workshop. So this workshop was funded to be delivered in person, which all the in-person deliveries have taken place across Doncaster. And then in the proposal, I also wrote about having a recorded version. So this can be accessed and lived on, even though the in-person deliveries has ended. And even though the project has ended, this now lives on online, can be shared on social media. I'm putting it on our website as well. So the project's carrying on even after the funding has ended. So the cost reward for it as well is greater. And so, how does the legacy impact you? So, it's also good to reflect on how this funding or project can impact you as a professional and how it can impact you in your career and trajectory. How does it impact the wider sector? So, how does it impact kind of other artists and creatives? Or how does it impact other sectors as well? And then lastly, how does it impact the community in place? So how is what you're doing impacting Doncaster or wherever you're based? Or South Yorkshire? All these things. Top tips. So I'm going to just run through some top tips. It's okay for, I touched on this earlier, but it's okay for your project to adapt and change in responses to any challenges or barriers that might come up. So often with creative projects, there is a lot of unknowns and things like that, and the barriers will come up. Maybe a venue falls through. Whatever happens, these things happen. But it's good to inform your commissioner as soon as you know. Not every grant is going to be a right fit for you either. So some applications you can shoehorn to fit your practice. However, others just won't be a right fit, and that's okay. You don't have to apply for every single grant that comes out. Always save a copy of what you've submitted. Write your application first on a separate Word document and then copy and paste it into the form as well. So, for example, for Arts Council funding, they use a software called Grantium, which is really old software and is really tricky to use. And there is issues with writing your application and then it kind of maybe crashing or closing down and then your application's been lost. So always just copy the questions into a Word doc or Google Doc and write your responses there first, and then copy and paste your responses into the actual application form, because you don't want to write your whole application and then it getting lost. And also, don't be discouraged if your proposal gets rejected. It could still be a really great idea. It just might not be the right fit for that grant. And that's absolutely fine. And that is very common as well. Like, your idea could still be really great, but it would fit better in another grant rather than the one that you've applied for. So you've got it. Well done. So what's next? Apart from freaking out that you've actually now got to deliver the project, what do we do next? So read the funding agreement. Keep receipts as well of what you've spent. Sometimes some commissioners will ask for receipts and documentation that you've spent what you spent. Take photos of the process as well. That's really helpful, and it'll help you apply for any additional funding if you have documentation of like the process. Feel free to use a project like organisational software such as Asana just to make sure that you are on track and organised. Gather any quotes, feedback, audience numbers or data. That again is really helpful to show your commissioner, but also when you are applying for any more funding, you've then got that as track record. Because once you get one funding pot, it's really easy to snowball and to get others. And then if there are any changes to the project or barriers that come up, try to let the funders know as soon as possible and leave time for evaluation at the end. Honestly review how it went. And funders might actually check in midway through to see how your project is going. That's completely normal. So yeah, don't be surprised if you get an email or a phone call kind of halfway through your project for a check-in. So it's good. It is handy to know that so that you don't leave everything till last minute. Because then you're going to be in with a nice surprise. And what do you do if you don't get it? Don't cry. Don't be upset. It's okay. Don't beat yourself up. It's completely normal to not be successful in everything that you apply for. And I would try to ask for feedback if you can. Read over your application. Is there any way that you could refine it? Honestly reflect. Was it the right funding stream for your project? If you want to resubmit it, how can you strengthen your application? Adapt the project or partner up with an organisation maybe. And just don't beat yourself up. Like I said in the previous slide, it still might be a really good project idea. It just might be the wrong funding stream for that project. And also where to find funding. So definitely join Doncaster Creative Network. It'll all be linked in the description. I share lots of different funding streams and grants and things that come out on the Facebook page mainly. And then these are all the other areas. So wherever you're based, I would be following all the arts and culture organisations wherever you're based, because they typically will share the funding and grants that come out. So and they'll normally share it over social media and in a newsletter as well. So you can sign up to the newsletters, follow them on social media, make sure you've got their notifications turned on so that when they post any opportunities or any money, you'll see it. Because I think that's the main thing is that oftentimes we can miss pots and grants and things like that come out because we've just not seen it, or we've been busy and we've not been online as much. But yeah, so that's what typically best thing to do. And we've reached to the end. Do a little clap. I know funding is often stressful and overwhelming, but I hope there was some helpful information in there for you. And if you want to find Doncaster Creative Network, that's our social media handle in the bottom left. And then my social media handles in the bottom right. I'll leave links and all sorts in the description. And yeah, if you need any extra support or have any questions, do drop me a message. Okie dokie. Thank you.